Hey everyone, welcome to episode 4 of LEGO Rewind, where we take a look back at some old LEGO themes and the trends they started. You can find the whole series playlist in the description. In the last episode, I said we're going back to a time before the time before time. That kind of phrasing may give the impression that this is a Bionicle episode. Well, sorry to say this isn't going to feature Bionicle much at all, at least not in its modern forms. We're tracing the DNA of Bionicle back to its roots. We're starting where we know and going backwards until we see something that barely resembles what we loved. And the first backward step down that evolutionary ladder takes us not that long before, actually. Anyone remember those Technic Star Wars figures they had going from 2000 to 2002? Very different from today's Star Wars figures, all anatomically correct. I had a few of these. I think the first one I got was the B-1 Battle Droid, which I liked because it could fold up or stand up just like in the movie. It even had a magnet in its hand and a crank that made it pull its blaster from its holster, and some red and yellow pieces you could switch out to change its ranking to a security or commander droid. There are even instructions for a fully working ATST with a swivelable head, bending legs and everything as an alt build. Anyone see this thing? I always wanted one, but didn't get around to it. I also got C-3PO and R2-D2. I just like droids. I was not a Construction fan at the time, or even much of a Technic fan really. But when I looked in the catalogs that came with, I saw it. That classic image of Tahu with his iconic scowl surfing on lava with a slab of rock, and Anua with an unintentionally scary Jason Voorhees mask, and that was it. I was in love, no going back. You wouldn't be able to tell just from looking at it here, but this stormtrooper is hiding a secret. You know that big Conquest of the Planet of the Apes where Breck says every human has a little ape curled up inside them? Well, apparently every stormtrooper has a little toe in them. Yeah, that threw me for a loop when I looked up the instructions some years ago and saw that. If I bought this set instead of 3PO, I'd have gotten a taste of Bionicle before buying any of the Bionicle sets. The arms are connected to the gears and everything. It's basically a giant Toamata. I mean, the legs don't do crap, but the head could move, so, you know, that was cool, just saying. Let's go back a little further. LEGO took a couple of stabs at buildable figures with the Throwbots, or Slicers rather, in 1999 and the Robo Riders in 2000. With the former, you had 4 good guys and 4 bad guys released at the same time, something we wouldn't see again until 2008, with both waves that year comprised of half a team of Toa and half a team of Makuta. Hero Factory did this a bit in their Breakout and Brain Attack lines too. Each team of Slicers could combine like the Toa Kaida, and they threw the same discs we see used by the Matoran until 2004. They had elemental motifs, worked in environments that suited their elements, and they were very colorful. They were basically the Toa's grandparents. Torch kinda reminds me of Pohatu with his upside down torso. Many of the pieces created for this line would carry over to Bionicle, with those puny primordial limbs being used as late as 2010. They looked downright vestigial then, but there was an unmistakable charm to them. Smaller and less detailed than later limbs, but the idea was there. They also had a gear function, but it wasn't made for anything dynamic like swinging their arms or whatever. It just curled them up slowly so they could fit inside their pods. You might think they should have just designed a more accommodating package, but they had plans, man. They wanted to sell these in vending machines. Just think about that, a vending machine where you could get polybags nowadays. Only this wasn't a polybag, but a little robot. And Lil is right. One of my favorite quirks is how these guys are just small enough to not look ridiculous wielding standard minifig skilled items, so they didn't quite need the big detailed swords and axes that Toa did. It's cute. The story was a bit of a mess. The Slicer backstory is actually pretty simple. You have one planet with 7 regions and a dome where they all connect and the Judge Slicer rules. Simple and to the point. In America and Canada, the Throwbot story is a little more out there. In this version, there are 8 planets, but only sometimes. And the Throwbots are called the Guardians of the Galaxy?
There's danger in a far-off galaxy. The LEGO Maniac sends out a distress call.
Calling all Throwbots. Torch needs your help in the fire zone.
This is Ski in the Arctic Zone. Now that I put the brakes on a deadly avalanche, I'm racing your way.
Hey, LEGO Maniac and Scuba here. I just jammed the giant jellyfish. I'll be there faster than a torpedo.
Hey, look, it's a turbo report for action, man. Things are pretty rocky here, man, but I'll kick it in the turbo drive and be there in the flesh, dang old man.
Look, Torch is fighting a fire monster that's too big to handle alone. I'm glad I could get you guys together, so I could put you together. Gotta build like crazy to create Robotops, a super throwback creation. Now you got the awesome power. The fire monster's met his match.
Facing a relentless pounding for the Robotop's flying discs, the fire monster collapses into a pile of ashes.
Proving once again the 4 Robots are better than 1.
This is so stupid. The Slicers version of the story takes an epic turn when a giant meteorite smashes half the planet into nothing, somehow leaving the rest of it perfectly intact, and the fallout creates freakish mutant Slicers. Man, this guy might not stand very tall next to the figures on your shelf today, but back then I'm sure he looked pretty big. The Slicers are a fondly remembered ancestor of the Toa of old, being the first LEGO figures to boast a ball and socket joint system, but their DNA is older than that, with Christian Faber coming up with the idea of a ball and cup figure himself in 1995. The Robo Riders were a bit of an oddity. From the sound of it, LEGO was surprised that kids got attached to the Slicers enough to be upset when the Robo Riders came along and replaced them. They were set on wheeling in a new construction theme every year. Even Bionicle's story was originally going to wrap up with the giant Motunui robot waking up at the end of 2001. Can you imagine what other things may have come along if Bionicle came and went so soon? How many other themes or different figures we'd have seen since then? Or if construction would even still be a thing now? In any case, the Robo Riders were essentially mostly limbless slicers that hurled wheels instead of discs. and I do mean hurl. But they also shared strong similarities with the Toa. 6 elemental heroes in a world made of 6 regions fighting an evil that wants to take it all. They even had pill-shaped cannons just like the Toa, and these backgrounds are a thing of beauty. Some of the wickedest, most metal images LEGO's ever produced, and the character descriptions are hilarious.
Acid-proof Robo Rider withstands radiation, acid rain, and toxic swamp gases. Without Swamp Robo Rider, you will die in no time at all. Studded tires carry this Robo Rider at turbo speeds across frosty landscapes bristling with vicious prickles and thorns. Nobody alive has a chance of going through this terrain without being skewered to death. A firefighter that guzzles the flames like a dragon, and spews chunks of rocks from the corners of its mouth like they were cherry stones. Lava Robo Rider loves doing battle with the fiery volcanoes, even when the lava is molten and the sky is black with ash. A desert devil that injects quicksand into his tracks and keeps out the swamp. This swamp is alive with speedy monsters, and if you end up in it, you are done for. So Dust Robo Rider is a lifesaver, if you're lucky. New Robo Riders from LEGO. If you don't buy our toys, you will die tomorrow.
This may be the most aggressive marketing campaign I've ever seen. That may have been LEGO's edgiest theme to date at the time. It took Bionicle at least like 4 or 5 years to get that intense. And these characters all had simple goofy names like Torch, Frost, Ski, Power. And the Toa were going to follow suit with names like Claw, Hook, and Kick. I had a couple of Robo Riders back in the day, and I'm sorry to say I had never bought the Slicers, but I did get to play with them at a friend's house, so I at least got a feel for them and see the appeal. You might think this journey ends here, but nope, we gotta go deeper. I've long found it interesting how the Rahi from 2001 used a bunch of Slicer and Robo Rider pieces in their builds. The Nui Rama, for example, used a more rare Slicer torso that makes the wings go forward just like on this guy. But it goes further than that. 1998 is when LEGO Technic underwent a transformation of sorts. Up until that point, the Technic beams still had studs on them, so they could also be used as normal LEGO bricks. But this is when the beams we see used more commonly nowadays were introduced, and the competition line made good use of them. Now, don't these look funny to you? 2 vaguely animalistic contraptions with different colors boxed together so 2 kids can each play with one. Yeah, these are Rahi. Sure, they don't have claws or horns or teeth like the 2001 Rahi we know, but they're basically the same thing. It's like the designers were just waiting to do this all that time. This is interesting to me since it basically makes Bionicle's early years a marriage between this theme and the Slicers theme. And even those giant minifigure pilots aren't quite like the minifigs we know. They have more points of articulation, sort of like a tiny construction figure baby. And these were used as early as 1986, for a time just cheekily known as the LEGO Technic guys. And it's past this point that we don't really see anything that looks like Bionicle anymore. But the DNA is still there, even going back to 1977. The pins and axles used throughout the theme's lifespan, those same gears used from the Slicers to the Toa's modern G2 counterparts were made 40 years ago, just waiting for something to strike a nerve until the Toa's evolution in motion. But if we go back any further, we'll just be back to normal bricks. You know, I'm sure Technic had its naysayers when it first appeared, people who thought it was a bad sign of things to come, that LEGO was getting too gimmicky and straying from its roots. And I'm sure there were more naysayers when they started using beams that didn't have studs on them. Just like there were AFOLs who thought these dumb robots were going to be the death of LEGO, and like some of us scratchy old Bionicle AFOLs called CCBS the same. I'm sure every step along that road was met with resistance, and whatever's thrown into the mix a few years from now will be hated similarly. Some of you may remember LJ in his Bionicle 2004 overview crediting me for coining the term Slicer engineering.
Now, I would like to bring up a topic and a term coined by a fan of ours, Nikon Aquamagna. He says that the Toa Metru were the peak of a building system he likes to call Slicer engineering. Now, how I understand it is that it is the basic balance between gear function and the ball and socket joint system that Bionicle has primarily used. He says it's more of a form and function kind of thing. He sees it like that, but he understands where I see it too. Now, the Slicer engineering, as he says, is kind of a Technic-ish building system that the Slicers back in the late 1990s kind of started off with, henceforth its name, considering that they were primarily built around function. They used some of the ball and socket joints, however, really they were just a function with a bunch of things built around it. Now, this type of building system was refined and kind of modernized in Tolmata in 2001, and here, he claims, and I agree with him, it is perfected. Toa Metru are a very great way of showing Slicer engineering, as he so coins the term, having a perfect balance between form and function, a gear system that works beautifully in tandem with ball and socket joints. They are the pinnacle of this system, and very fine sets at that. The Toa Metru are arguably the best Toa sets we got during Generation 1. They did the best they could at combining form and function, allowing for mobility without sacrificing gears. While the 2015 Masters eventually outdid them in this regard, they're well recognized as excellent designs, the Toa Masters from 2015. They don't make the list for the same reason as the Baraki, but are arguably an improvement on the goal the Toa Metru attempted to achieve. They successfully combine form and function, as well as provide excellent durability with the use of the character and creature building system, more commonly known as CCBS.
The gist of that term is the dilemma those classic balls and cups created. Technic was all about functions, but now they had to make these functions work inside an action figure. It became a balancing act. How much should you compromise in the name of form or function? Do you sacrifice looks or actions? Is it more important that Tahu be posable, or that his arm swings when you turn that gear? Do you sacrifice functionality so a figure looks and poses better? Or do you sacrifice that sleekness to insert more gimmicks? Is it Technic or an action figure? Is it a doll or a wind-up toy? What kind of toy should it be? And where do you find that middle ground? This is a struggle of construction that dates back to before many of us were born, and I'm not sure it's even right for me to call it Slicer Engineering anymore. Maybe Technic Engineering? Or Lego Engineering? Kinda loses its meaning if we make it that general. It really started when the balls and cups were introduced. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this look back at some old Lego themes. Next time, well, I'm not sure what episode 5 should be about. I have some ideas, but I need to see if this series could be considered a success or not. I need my videos to get more traffic and send that traffic to my books, since that's the most important thing I'm doing now. I need that kind of increase, or I can't keep making these the way I am. These LEGO Rewind videos have taken much longer to edit than I thought they would, and that unfortunately takes precious time away from developing Planet Ripple's future books. Do you guys think it was worth it to make these? If so, please share and do consider checking my other projects out. I hope you've enjoyed what I had to say about LEGO so far. Toodles for now!
Lego Technic. After you make it move. Pistons that pump. Gears that'll get you going.